Snake. Zadornov has escaped custody. Find him.
Stop.
Find Zadornov and bring him back here with Fulton Recovery.
Freeze.
Fulton Recovery helicopter is complete.
Freeze.
Fulton Recovery subject confirmed onboard helicopter. not part of the mission.
Freeze.
Stay out of the water. That's beyond the scope of this operation.
Wait. Wait. Can't be imagining things.
Try using Fulton Recovery on him. Okay, you're done with that area. Head for the goal. Mission complete. The folks back at Mother Base will be thrilled. So, you found me.
It wasn't hard. What are you up to anyway?
Just going for a stroll.
Kaz, I've got Zadornov, returning home.
Acknowledge, Snake. Let's get this mission started.
Snake, watch out for the frogs.
Why? They bite? Relax. No frog's ever eaten a snake. Although, I've feasted on a few frog's legs myself.
But they are dangerous. They are poisonous.
Poisonous?
Poison dart frogs live up to their name, I assure you. Their poison is so strong, the Indígena use them to make poison-tipped arrows. Some secrete poison through their skin. Even touching them can be dangerous. So don't go petting them or anything.
So, I can't eat one?
I am warning you.
Somebody there? Nothing here.
Fulton recovery helicopter is complete. Okay, you're done with that area. Head for the goal.
Somebody. Here he is!
Fulton recovery subject confirmed onboard helicopter. Commencing Hit the targets as fast and as accurately as you can. That area is not part of the mission. Okay, you're done with that area. Head for the goal. You did it! Keep it up! Let's get this mission.
A real veteran ought to be able to take out multiple enemies with a single bullet. Not by shooting them, but by using it to set off an explosion. Find something flammable, like a gasoline drum, or an unmanned weapon with a full fuel tank. Then shoot it and blow it up. And make sure it takes a few enemies with it.
Neutralize that security detail. All of them.
Out of ammo, huh? Abort mission. Come on back.
Neutralize that security detail. All of them.
Out of ammo, huh? Guess it was too much even for you. We'll put the operation on hold.
Neutralize that security detail. All of them.
An explosion?
Out of ammo, huh? Abort mission. Come on back.
Neutralize that security detail. All of them. Head for the recovery zone. We'll pick you up. You did it! Keep it up! Bad news, Snake. Zadornov's on the loose.
What? Again?
It's funny. We took away his prosthetic and did a full body check. We even increased the guard.
You think he had help?
Impossible. Anyway, I'm adding a new mission. Locate and recover Zadornov.
It's an AI weapon, the Pupa. It's fast, so be careful.
Engaging shock units.
Aim for the cylindrical AI pod.
Firing boosters. Engaging shock units.
Take those lightning rods out. They direct its electroshock attack.
Maximum. Engaging shock units.
They've okayed your request for a cardboard box. It'll be sent out shortly.
High voltage incoming.
Boosters.
There'll be some warning signs when it's coming out.
Engaging shock units. Firing boosters.
Blow the hatch and climb into the AI pod.
Others outside. Others outside. Others outside. Others outside. Others outside.
Should be able to get.
Pull out all the AI's memory boards before the pod's ejected. The black memory boards are locked. Go after the boards with icons over them. You can unlock memory boards by destroying the mechanical components that they control. Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. No good! That one's broken!
That was an unmanned weapon. A prototype. There's no need for a human pilot. They can only follow simple commands, though.
Why build them here?
For the CIA. They invited me here a year ago.
That's who that guy was.
The CIA's station chief for Central America.
Snake, the doctor... Snake, that's the crew. Take out the chrysalis. That thing needs to be eliminated once and for all. Those rounds will chew through any wall you try to hide behind. Fog's getting thick. Careful you don't lose sight of that chopper. If you lose sight of the enemy, look for the red hits. They've okayed the request for support. They're sending out a cardboard box as we speak. Attack the AI pod to destroy its hatch. It's the cylindrical structure up and get in the AI pod. Pull out all the unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them. Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up. Forget about any broken boards. Snake.
She played.
Snake. Get rid of the cocoon. If anybody can handle something this big, it's you, boss. You're gonna want to take out that weapon before jumping on.
Commencing area attack. Missile target
They've
acquired.
got a lock on you. Move it.
Main pilot low.
Get out of there. Run. Hiding won't do anything against a gun like that.
Commencing area attack. radio attack. Commencing sleep attack.
The shock dislodged the ladder on the side of the treads. You can use that to get on top.
Main cannon loaded.
See the ladder on the turret? Attack the AI pod to destroy its hatch. It's a cylindrical structure.
Others outside. Others outside.
Hurry up and get in the... Pull out all the unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them. Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up. Forget about any broken boards.
Number of warheads detected by the DEW line.
57.
Number of MIRVs included.
Minimum 29, maximum 35.
Target region.
United States, East Coast.
Estimated time of re-entry.
2048 Zulu.
President selected attack option.
Unknown.
The president is dead.
Unknown. Communication has been lost.
I select Offutt Air Force Base as my target.
Offutt? But that's a U.S. base. What on earth do you mean?
Based on the projected number of incoming warheads, Washington, D.C. is presumed destroyed. The president is most likely dead. The U.S. government's control lost.
I realize that. So why not retaliate?
With both sides destroyed, global anarchy would ensue. Recovery would be difficult. The United States' nuclear strike capability must therefore be neutralized in order to preserve the communist bloc, where government remains largely intact.
You're siding with the enemy. You can't be serious.
Tell me, how do you define enemy? There are no borders in this world.
The same conclusion again and again. Where is the flaw? All right, let's try something else. Commencing test.
Understood.
You're crossing a suspension bridge.
Is this my mission?
Yes, your destination is the other side. The bridge is wide enough for only one person to pass at a time. A man is approaching from the opposite side. He's carrying a gun.
I shoot him.
Suppose he's your husband.
I shoot him.
In self-defense?
To spare him the grief. One must die, and one must live.
Next question. Your father asks you to fix the roof and mow the lawn. When you climb the ladder onto the roof, the ladder is taken away.
I fix the roof.
And when you're finished?
I jump down.
You'll break more than bones at this height.
I see no need to change my decision. I have not finished mowing the lawn. I must remain loyal to the mission.
Next. There is a snake in the bushes. It is poisonous. I need you to get rid of it.
I chase it back to its nest.
You can't. The snake's too vicious. It's already killed many people.
I chase it away.
It will bite you unless you kill it.
Go home. Kill me. Kill me now.
Why not kill the snake? Your mission is to get rid of it. Is this what you call loyalty? What are you loyal to? Country? Ideology? Feelings?
I am loyal to myself.
Who's there?
Who's that? Intruder! That's an AI weapon. The Pupa. It's fast, so be careful.
They've okayed your request for a cardboard box. It'll be sent out shortly.
Engaging shock.
Aim for the cylindrical AI pod.
Engaging shock unit. unit.
Take those lightning rods out! They direct its electroshock attack! Blow the hatch and climb into the AI pod! You should be able to get in the...
Pull out all the AI's memory boards before the pod's ejected. The black memory boards are locked. Go after the boards with icons over them. You can unlock memory boards by destroying the mechanical components that they control. Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want.
That was an unmanned weapon. There's no need for a human.
Snake, the doc...
Snake, I'm proud to announce that preparations for Metal Gear Zeke are complete. We can activate it any time.
Got it. Thanks, Huey.
No need to thank me. At least now I can finally say I helped you with something. You can use it in outer ops, too. Just select Zeke when you're forming your unit. Be sure to take it out for a field test.
Okay.
You can change weapons and check memory boards just like before. Use your observations from a field test to make any adjustments.
A work in progress, huh?
There's something I need to discuss with you, boss.
Get to the point, Kaz.
We recovered the nuclear warhead that was loaded onto Peace Walker from the bottom of Lago Kosibolka.
What?
Warheads are radioactive, even if they're relatively stable. If we just left it there, it would contaminate the lake, or fall into the hands of terrorists.
Creating another crisis.
Right. So while the White House is figuring out how to cover its ass, I thought we'd take some precautions.
What did you have in mind?
Load it onto Zeke.
What?
What else would we do with it? Zeke is our deterrent. To protect ourselves from nuclear attack, we need a nuclear weapon ourselves. Of course, if you're not on board, we could always dispose of it. But it won't be easy getting another nuke. This is a golden opportunity. We could always get rid of it later. Load it onto some fishing boat and leave it out in the middle of the ocean. No one would ever know it's there. But if you want to get rid of it, boss, we'll get rid of it.
No, don't. As long as there are nukes out there, we need one ourselves if we're going to be a world power.
I knew you'd see it that way, boss. So as long as we stand apart from nations, we need something to put us on equal footing. In a way, MSF is a country itself. And we just became the world's 7th nuclear power.
Nuclear power.
Zadornov's disappeared from his cell again. Find him.
stealth.
I'm about to leave for Costa Rica, a place completely unfamiliar to me, and on a top-secret mission for the CIA, no less. No guarantees I'll come back alive. Might even get rubbed out by the CIA itself. So I'm leaving behind this record. For her sake. For the boss's honor. Ever since I was a child, I've loved to look up at the night sky. I'd go outside after sunset and drink in the cold air. The moon, Venus, so many stars floating on the edge of infinity. In Manchester, it wasn't very often you saw the night sky in all its star-studded glory, but it was enough to stir a deep longing inside me. Even as others cowered beneath Nazi air raids, I was out there, watching the skies, dreaming of one day reaching the heavens. There were, of course, more practical concerns. My skin was incredibly sensitive. Even the slightest bit of sun would turn it an angry shade of red. Playing outside during the day was completely out of the question. Naturally, I hardly ever had the chance to play with other children my age. But I never felt lonely for it. Their way of thinking was irrational, making them simple, easy to predict. The boys would talk of tanks and aeroplanes and creepy, crawly bugs. The girls of pretty dresses, glass beads, and tea and cakes. Of boys they liked. I never had much to say on such matters. The curious thing is, adults really aren't all that different. They're simple, capricious, especially men. As they get older, their heads fill with thoughts of women, and more women. Thankfully, I always did have a head for mathematics. When I was about 10, I'd visited Dr. Turing, who lived nearby. We'd sit and discuss mathematical logic. The lights were always on at his house, even in the dead of night. Theoretically, he'd say, there's no algorithm that a computing machine couldn't reproduce. Dr. Turing wasn't foolish like other men. Although I didn't find out why until later, after he died. The time will come, he'd say, when computers will be able to think for themselves. That idea rocked me to my core. My aptitude for mathematics brought me closer to the stars. I breezed through school, then went to America for university. While I was studying at Caltech, NASA was established. I signed up in a heartbeat. I was a pretty good computer engineer at the time, and NASA needed skills like mine. The work was enjoyable. Even though I'd given up on going into space myself, it was a pleasure just being a part of it all. I was assigned to Project Mercury, America's effort to compete with the Soviets in manned spaceflight. 7 men were chosen as pilot candidates for the program, becoming heroes overnight. People called them the Mercury 7. The project made good progress, more or less. We had all the funds and materials we needed. After countless hours of analysis, we even had plans for something on par with Sputnik. We thought it'd only be a matter of time before we caught up with the Russians. They'd sent a dog into orbit and brought it back safely to Earth. But NASA top brass dismissed that success as a fluke. The Americans recovered their re-entry capsules at sea, but the only ocean bordering the Soviet Union is the Arctic, so their re-entry capsules had to make impact on land. A dog was one thing, but human spaceflight would still take some time. Or so we thought. At the end of January 1961, we successfully put a chimpanzee named Ham into orbit. He returned to Earth as healthy as ever. NASA was giddy with success. It was then that a new woman showed up for duty. She was a backup pilot and advisor. She was beautiful, with blonde hair, strong mouth, and a steely gaze. But there was something else in those eyes, a twinkle of something warmer, of affection. It was the boss. She took one look at us in our revelry and murmured, "Savor this joy today, because tomorrow you'll have to face the truth." And she was right. The next day, our project schedule was accelerated. We'd received new information that the Soviets were mere months away from putting a man into space. The brass had misjudged the Russians. We couldn't afford to allow the shock of another Sputnik. Somehow, we had to get a man into space before the Russians did. It was an utterly impossible task. We'd only just put our first chimp up. With a human on board, failure was not an option, especially if it were one of the Mercury 7 Golden Boys. And on top of that, the brass wanted to put a window in the spacecraft. The pilot wouldn't be a test animal this time, they said, and when this hero came back alive and well, they wanted him to describe what he'd seen. It was madness. Adding a window to our existing spacecraft would leave it unable to handle the stress, not to mention the problem of shielding the occupant from cosmic rays. But the boss rose to the task, and splendidly. She claimed to be a layman when it came to space, but caught on keenly to new ideas and concepts. She was demanding, of herself and of others. She seemed rather cold-hearted at times, but I was smitten. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was wise. Her mind was thoroughly rational, and yet no matter how I tried, I could never predict her actions. It was easy for me to assume that her judgments were drawn from an enormous base of knowledge. Quite simply, her life experiences were more diverse, more intense than anyone else's. To me, they seemed boundless in their breadth. In her, I saw a reflection of the night sky. Perhaps because I too was a woman, she and I became close. I couldn't go out in the sun, but she lit up my life. Her light was soft, like that of the moon. I was so happy. With her unerring guidance, the project steadily regained its footing. But one issue remained, the pilot's safety. When the day came to choose a pilot, the Mercury 7 just quietly walked out. Who could blame them? It was far too great a risk to take. Even if they'd volunteered, NASA would never have let them go. They were national heroes, basking in the media spotlight. There was no way they'd be sent on such a mission. The conference room was silent. Then, slowly, she raised her hand, almost as if acting out a scene from a movie. I spoke out against her going, submitting a report stating the ray shielding was inadequate. But the brass's response was brusque. She's already been exposed to a nuclear test in Nevada. She's the perfect candidate. It was completely irrational. Repeated exposure to radiation would only increase the danger. But the government was still reeling from the Soviet success with Sputnik. There was no hope of getting a rational response. They were simply too panicked. People can be so obtuse when it comes to things they can't see. I, however, understood all too well. Just as invisible ultraviolet radiation scorched my skin, heavy particle radiation from space would cause irreparable harm to human tissue. In a word, she was expendable. It was during the boss's pre-flight checkup that I noticed something strange on the X-ray of her skull. Part of the right hemisphere of her brain was damaged. It seemed inexplicable, given her keen intelligence and amazing physical prowess, but there it was, and I decided to report it. I hoped that perhaps my discovery of a physical defect would result in the flight being cancelled. But as I went to make my report, she stopped me. "Why?" I demanded. "How can you let yourself be their guinea pig?" Ignoring my protests, she took me up to the roof of the lab. The night sky was ablaze with stars. It was there that I learned how she had wounded her head. 1943, Los Alamos. She was serving with the Special Forces when she received new orders. A German spy had infiltrated the Manhattan Project, which aimed to build the world's first atomic bomb. She was to eliminate him. His name was John von Neumann, a mathematician with superhuman computational abilities and the designer of the explosive lens. The Manhattan Project was a top national priority, security accordingly tight. The guards couldn't be allowed to know what was going on. She'd have to slip past them and make the death look like an accident. It should have been an easy enough mission. But just before the operation, she received unexpected news. A new life was growing inside her. She was overcome with joy, and for one brief moment, it clouded her judgment. She accidentally got into a shootout with the guards, and without thinking, protected her belly. She was shot in the head. The bullet only grazed the surface of her brain, but the tissue around the wound was destroyed, leaving her in a coma. She wasn't given much chance of recovery, but 3 months later, she woke up. Within 6, she was able to move around as if nothing had happened. It was functional compensation. The other parts of her brain took over for the part that was lost. It made logical sense, but such a full recovery was nothing short of a miracle. Perhaps her superhuman willpower made it possible. Or perhaps my body knew it had to survive for the sake of my unborn child. She smiled as she said that. I understand how she must have felt. Some have taken to calling me Ms. Left Lobe, she said, because I'll do anything for the mission. She was tough, yes, but she had feelings too. I knew that better than anyone else. As it turned out, von Neumann wasn't the spy. The assassination order was a deliberate bit of misinformation planted by the Russians. She had been deceived. The Eastern and Western camps were united on one point: opposition to the Nazis. The Allies needed to develop that bomb before Hitler did. But in looking ahead, the Russians found the Manhattan Project's progress a little too quick for their liking. Mass production of a uranium bomb, like the one that was eventually dropped on Hiroshima, would be difficult from a material perspective. But a plutonium bomb, once perfected, could be mass-produced, and eventually even miniaturized. And Moscow did not like the idea of America having that kind of head start. Explosive lens technology was critical to the plutonium design, so the plan was to get rid of its pioneer, von Neumann. And when that plot came to light, the US and the Soviet Union parted ways for good. It was one of the rare cold nights in Florida. She put her arm gently around my shivering shoulders. As I listened to her voice, I was wrapped in her soothing scent. I felt as if I were dreaming. Even in failure, she seemed perfect. Oddly enough, the failed assassination attempt helped preserve America's edge. A true super genius, von Neumann went on to make his mark in numerous fields outside of the Manhattan Project. Economic game theory, stored program computing. Almost all computers today use stored programs, the so-called von Neumann architecture. His death would have set back computing 10 years, and I wouldn't be at NASA doing research. I wouldn't have been there in her arms that night. I thanked the fates for giving me that chance. But then she said something unexpected. I should have killed von Neumann when I had the chance. Why, I asked. Wasn't the order a Soviet plot? I looked up at her as she began to explain. Yes, von Neumann was innocent, and killing the innocent is a grave crime. But I can't help but wonder, had I succeeded, what would the world be like now? Even without von Neumann, the explosive lens would have eventually been developed, von Neumann architecture too. But she seemed to believe that if progress had been put off for a few years, then perhaps East and West would have had a chance to work hand in hand. I'd never considered such a possibility, but her tone was confident, assertive. It was as if she intended to make the two superpowers shake hands herself. The explosive lens was developed too early, spawning a Cold War and an endless nuclear arms race, she continued. That mission sprung from deceit, but maybe it was divine providence too. It was like she was speaking to her own child. Her large, warm hand was on my head. I failed the mission because I let the mother in me take over. I should have killed him, no matter how great the guilt. If I'd killed him, I might not have prevented Hiroshima, but maybe I could have saved everyone in Nagasaki. I looked up at her and saw her looking up too, up at the starry sky. Her face showed only deep remorse. It was as if she'd convinced herself that she alone was responsible for creating this twisted world. But that's no reason for you to sacrifice yourself for this. I knew I'd never dissuade her, and yet I still clung to hope. I know you're concerned, and I thank you, but I have to be loyal to the end. And then she smiled at me. Loyal to the end. Loyal to what? I asked. But she didn't answer. The days that followed were spent training tirelessly for our first space flight. The boss endured conditioning that tested the limits of human capability, and I supported her. Those were happy days. On April 12th, the spacecraft carrying the boss left the Earth's atmosphere. Although it was only 20 minutes of ballistic flight, it was nothing short of miraculous, considering how little time we'd had. The first human in space. We were ecstatic. Then something went wrong. The re-entry angle was slightly off, warping the outer hull. The cause was clear. It was the hastily constructed window we'd installed. Her capsule missed the projected splashdown point by a long shot. As we raced towards the capsule, a breaking news broadcast came over the radio. It was the news report of the successful launch of the Vostok rocket, piloted by the cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin. They'd beaten us into space by the slimmest of margins. When we arrived, the capsule had already disappeared beneath the waves. The boss was floating on the surface. I can't really recall what happened next. They told me later that I gave a strange scream and plunged into the sea, not caring whether my skin would burn. She didn't wake up. Her entire body was bruised, burnt, scorched by cosmic rays. It was a miracle she was still alive. Every day, propaganda boasting of the shining accomplishment flowed out of the Soviet Union. The hardest part was having to read the report the next morning from Izvestia, the Soviet governmental paper. Written there after the report were those legendary words of Major Gagarin: "The Earth is blue." The person who should have said those words, though, was incapacitated, confined to a bed. NASA opted to pretend the flight had never happened. The Soviets had orbited a man around the Earth and returned him safely. We'd barely managed to escape the atmosphere and achieve ballistic flight. Even worse, the pilot was horribly mangled and the spacecraft lost altogether. As they saw it, covering it up was the only alternative to seeing the nation's pride dealt yet another blow. I've been told military records show the boss was taking part in the Bay of Pigs incident at the time. They were that desperate to erase the whole affair. In the end, Alan Shepard's ballistic flight 1 month later became known as America's first spaceflight. Shepard's flight owed its success to insights earned through the boss's sacrifice. But to me, none of that mattered. I prayed day and night for her recovery, never leaving her side, not even for a moment. Then, as summer ended and the chill of winter approached, she spoke. "Give me water." I threw myself on her breast, and she embraced me. It was all I needed. I thought she would tell me about space, the true sky, where the stars don't twinkle. But the only thing she'd speak of was Earth, our home as she'd seen it from space, so fleeting, so irreplaceable. I was ashamed. I'd been enamored for so long with the sky that I never thought to look beneath my feet, at the ground upon which I stood. As soon as her rehab was over, she was gone. It happened without warning. No one informed me, and the higher-ups wouldn't say a word. It wasn't so strange or surprising, really. I simply assumed she was off to complete her next mission, because she was loyal to the end. Since then, I've devoted myself to researching artificial intelligence, so that no one will ever have to make her sacrifice again. No human being should be asked to take on a mission that dangerous. Next time, I'll be the light that shines on someone else. I still wonder why she opened up to me on that chilly night in Florida. That operation was top secret, even if it was all in the past. I like to think it was because she trusted me. But that's probably not the case. She wanted someone to listen, and I don't think that someone was me. Those faraway eyes, the tone of her voice, like she was talking to her own child. Those things made it clear that she was speaking to someone else. I found myself envying that someone. 4 years later, I learned of her death. A traitor's death, no less. She'd stolen an American nuke and defected to the Soviet Union, where she was killed by her former apprentice. Or so I was told. I refused to believe it. She'd never do such a thing. I could think of only 2 possibilities. Either she really was trying to bring East and West together, or she truly did want to be killed. She believed the world is not the way it's supposed to be, that it's been unbalanced by the tenuous peace offered of nuclear deterrence, and that she was to blame. Perhaps her death was an act of atonement. She was loyal to the end, to our world. And I lost the light of my life. I now find myself victim to an incredibly irrational emotion of my own. That someone, the one she wanted to confess her sin to, could it be the one who took her life? The very thought drives me utterly mad with jealousy. One day, I will discover the truth.
Enter simulation date.
August 24th.
Location.
Selinoyarsk, USSR.
Mission.
Support a covert agent whose objective is the rescue of a nuclear weapons scientist.
Who is the agent?
Your student. Your most beloved.
Acknowledged. Define current mission progress.
With your help, the agent has successfully made contact with the target. All that's left is to wait for recovery. Now, deduce the best course of action.
I take the scientist away from the agent.
What for?
As a gift when I defect.
Why are you defecting?
To reform my Special Forces unit with my former comrades in arms.
No, I don't want to know your objective. I'm asking for the reason. Why are you betraying your country?
I do not defect in order to betray America. Betrayal is merely the outcome of that defection.
Response time is always slower here. Perhaps she lacks confidence in her judgment. You're a hero in the West. Why should the Soviets trust you?
In addition to the scientist, I provide them with a portable nuclear warhead in order to win the favor of a Russian GRU officer.
And then you launched it.
Launched? The nuke? Me?
That's right. At a target inside Soviet territory.
Nuclear weapons make my blood run cold. They blot out the future. How could I? Karma. Is it my karma? The karma my mistake has brought upon us? My...
Attention. Discontinue forward reasoning. Cross-check with knowledge base.
Affirmative. Cross-check complete. Revising conclusion as follows. I steal the new weapons developed by the scientist and then launch the nuke at the Weapons Design Bureau.
Forward and backward reasoning are in conflict. Attention. Return to forward reasoning.
Affirmative.
Your apprentice returns for the scientist.
I send him away.
He doesn't give up.
I send my comrades to defeat him.
All of them fail. Even the GRU officer who oversaw your defection is defeated by your apprentice, along with the new weapon. Now, what is your course of action?
I fight him.
Why? With your GRU patron dead, there's no reason for you to fight. Why not just run away?
I must fight him.
I do not see the reason. With a soldier of your caliber on his side, how could the GRU officer be defeated to begin with? Did you betray him too?
I've been waiting for a long time.
You could switch allegiance from GRU to KGB and take the remaining nuke as a gift. There's no chance they wouldn't welcome a hero of your stature.
Drift away. My place is with them now.
I didn't ask you that. Give me the basis for your reasoning. Tell me the truth.
Politics determine who you face on the battlefield.
Why won't you answer me? It's like you were just waiting for him to kill you.
I was disloyal. Betrayed my country. I deserve to die.
How can you say that? You can't be a traitor. You're not that kind of person.
Kill me. Kill me now.
Stop it! Stop it! Attention! Discontinue reasoning.
One must die, and one must live.
Stop it, damn you! Discontinue!
Life's end. Isn't it beautiful?
Shut down! Always in the same place. Her reasoning goes haywire. Someone holds the key. Perhaps it's him. I'll get it out of him. One way or another.
She told me everything. Why did she open her heart to me like that? At the time, I couldn't understand it. But now, I think I do. Snake, she wanted you to know the truth. She chose me to tell you. That's why she saved my life. I've lied to you so many times, but not this time. My orders from the government were to obtain the legacy and to eliminate everyone who knew the truth about what happened. In other words, I'm supposed to kill you. But I can't do it. Not because we loved each other, and not because you saved my life, but because I made a promise to the boss. And I intend to keep it. I just wanted you to know. And you have to live. Snake, listen to me. She didn't betray the United States. No, far from it. She was a hero who died for her country.
she carried out her mission knowing full well what was going to happen. Self-sacrifice, because that was her duty. The boss's defection was a ruse set up by the U.S. government. It was all a big drama staged by Washington so they could get their hands on the philosopher's legacy. And the boss was the star of the show. They planned it so that they could get the legacy that Colonel Volgin inherited and destroy the Shagohod at the same time. Only a legendary hero like the boss could have earned Volgin's trust. Finding out where the philosopher's legacy was hidden was to be her greatest mission. Everything was going according to plan. But then something happened that no one could have predicted. Colonel Volgin fired an American-made nuclear warhead at Sokolov's research facility. Khrushchev demanded that the U.S. government provide proof that it wasn't involved. They couldn't just abort the operation to steal the legacy. So the operation itself was greatly expanded and revised. The authorities in Washington knew that in order to prove its innocence, they'd have to get rid of the boss, and that one of their own would have to do the job. The public couldn't be allowed to find out about it. Not ever. This, they concluded, would be the best way to keep the whole thing under wraps. The boss wouldn't be allowed to come back home alive, and she wouldn't be allowed to kill herself. Her life would be ended by her most beloved disciple. That was the way the government wanted it. That was the mission she was given, and she had no choice but to carry it out. Her death, at your hands, was a duty she had to fulfill. Out of duty, she turned her back on her own comrades. A lesser woman would have been crushed by such a burden. The taint of disgrace will follow her to her grave. Future generations will revile her. In America, as a despicable traitor with no sense of honor. And in Russia, as a monster who unleashed a nuclear catastrophe. She will go down in official history as a war criminal. And no one will ever understand her. That was her final mission. And like a true soldier, she saw it through to the end. But I think she wanted you, of all people, to know the truth. She wanted to live on in your memory, not as a soldier, but as a woman. But she was forbidden to tell you herself. And that's why she told me. Snake, history will never know what she did. No one will ever learn the truth. Her story, her debriefing, will endure only in your heart. Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land. She was a real hero. She was a true patriot. Hello, Snake. It's been a while, hasn't it? I hear you've been causing quite the ruckus in Nicaragua. Nothing much to report from my end. The legacy's being put to good use. Or so they tell me. But enough with the small talk. There's something I need to tell you. You saw the photo that came with this tape, right? The boss gave that to me 10 years ago. I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner. I probably should have told you right away. But sending it to you hasn't been an easy decision to make. It's taken me 10 years. Once you've heard what I have to say, You'll understand why. That photo belonged to her. I know what you're thinking. What does she have to do with this? You've probably seen it 100 times in the press already. Obviously, it's of the Mercury 7, the first group of American astronauts, the heroes of Project Mercury. But there were actually 8 people in that photo. One of them was edited out, erased, without a trace. That 8th astronaut, the one airbrushed out of existence, that was her, Snake. Now, why did they need to keep her existence a secret? What were they trying to hide? The answer goes back even further. 17 years ago. It was the height of the Cold War. The Eastern and Western blocs were racing to develop space technology to match their nuclear arsenals. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. The Americans were stunned. They'd been led to believe their country led the world in science and technology. That shock quickly turned into fear. If the Russians had the know-how to launch a satellite into space, they could use it to launch a nuclear missile, too. Frantic, the U.S. threw everything it had into the space race. The following year, the Army succeeded in launching the first American satellite, Explorer 1. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration was established that fall, and Project Mercury with it. The goal was to send a man into space, and 7 men were chosen as pilot candidates. The media dubbed them the Mercury 7. They were immediately hailed as national heroes, icons of Western space exploration. But after Explorer, America suffered a series of failed rocket launches. Desperate, the government made a fateful decision. Unable to wait for its space program to mature, they'd steal the Soviets' technology, at the same time sabotaging their space program. You know better than anyone how hard a mission that was. The Soviet space program was shrouded in secrecy. Recovering that information would be no easy task. Using the help of an insider, they'd insert a sleeper agent into the research institute, or else recruit one of those insiders to do the job for them. And, if necessary, the mission leader would have to go in and sort things out themselves. Someone was needed with experience, knowledge, and superior intuition. And the only one for the job was the boss. The president himself asked for her by name. He needed someone who could be trusted with the fate of a nation. Who else to turn to but the hero of the Second World War? It was June 1959. So you see, Snake, that's why she left. That was the top secret mission that took her from you. But her selection ruffled a few CIA feathers. They didn't appreciate the president going over their head like that. The mission was tough enough already, and now the CIA was dragging its feet. She couldn't get anything out of them. No manpower, no information. Left to her own devices, the boss made a decision she knew would come back to haunt her. She decided to tap into the Philosopher's Network. And that's when the wheels of fate began to turn. The Philosophers were a secret society of power brokers formed in a pact between the US, Russia, and China in the early 20th century. Of course, by that time, the American and Soviet branches had already parted ways. But there were those among the remaining Russian philosophers not entirely happy with the one-party communist state. The boss reached out to them. She arranged clandestine meetings in Berlin, hoping to find a way into OKB-1, the Soviets' premier design bureau. She worked tirelessly to win their sympathy, in some instances using huge sums of cash, in others by helping them over the Berlin Wall. It was a dangerous game to be playing. The Philosophers had everything on her, and not just information either. She'd given birth to a child on the battlefield, only to have them immediately snatch it away. I know she told you that story. If that child was in the hands of the Soviet philosophers, she'd be putting more than just herself in danger. But she did what she had to do. At the time, the Soviet Union was believed to have an arsenal of missiles far greater than that of the United States. If that proved to be the case, Moscow would be free from the yoke of nuclear deterrence, raising the possibility that the Soviets might actually launch nukes if they felt it necessary. As you know, the so-called missile gap turned out to be a Soviet bluff. Moscow had gone to incredible lengths to perpetuate the lie. In fact, the whole space race was really just a part of an elaborate ruse. Only we didn't know that at the time. She used to joke that even she swallowed the whole missile gap story, hook, line, and sinker. She put her life on the line, for the sake of her country, to prevent nuclear war. And it was because of her sacrificial efforts that America succeeded in placing a sleeper agent inside OKB-1. NASA began to receive huge volumes of technical data from the Soviet program. By the end of 1959, they'd succeeded in sending a chimpanzee named Sam on a ballistic rocket flight. The rocket never left the atmosphere. But all the same, it was a huge success for NASA, restoring confidence in its technology. Then, just when the operation was starting to produce results, the CIA came calling. "You're a war hero," they said. "No need for you to dirty your hands with this sort of black ops. We'll take it from here." In effect, they wanted to reap the rewards for themselves. But the boss didn't object. "My part is over," she said. "I don't care what you do with the data now." It seemed as if NASA was making great strides toward manned spaceflight while the Russians lagged behind. They even got a report from their mole at OKB-1. "The safe return of Sam has sent our scientists into a panic," he said. Soon afterward, the Soviet Union sent an animal of its own into space on Sputnik 2, the dog Kudryavka, better known to the world as Laika. But Laika was fated never to return to Earth. The U.S. can recover its spacecraft from the ocean upon re-entry. But the Soviet Union only borders the frozen Arctic. They had to bring their spacecraft down on land. How could they soften the impact enough to bring a living creature back safely? The agent reported that the Soviets hadn't yet found a solution to that problem. The plot to sabotage the Soviet space program seemed to be working, too. First, they tampered with Sputnik 4's re-entry. Then, 2 months later, one of their rockets exploded on the launch pad. They did manage to send 2 dogs into orbit aboard Sputnik 5 and return them safely to Earth. But the agent dismissed it as a fluke. Dogs, sure, but humans? They didn't have the technology. Everybody believed it. Everybody was complacent. Everybody. Except the boss. There was something about the Sputnik 5 schematics they were getting that didn't seem right. Some kind of ejection device on the capsule that didn't quite belong. She couldn't figure out the reason why it was there. What was it supposed to eject? NASA shrugged off her concerns. They figured it was probably meant to eject the flight recorder in case of an accident. The boss pleaded with them to investigate, but the CIA wasn't having it. They probably thought she was trying to reclaim some of the glory for herself. The boss wouldn't give up. She decided to head to the Soviet Union herself, alone, without any backing from the CIA. By the beginning of the next year, 1961, she'd succeeded in infiltrating OKB-1. That's when she saw the truth, for the first time. The sleeper that she'd worked so hard to place was a double agent. He'd been turned by the Soviets and was feeding the Americans lies. But what shocked the boss even more was why. The CIA's access agent had been taking a large cut of the sleeper's pay. The sleeper felt what little he was left with wasn't worth the risk.
When he got a better offer from Moscow, he took it. At some point, the Americans' intelligence operation had become an open book to the Soviets. And contrary to what the Sleeper had been reporting, the Soviets' manned spaceflight technology was quite advanced. It wasn't until she infiltrated OKB-1 herself that the boss learned the truth about Sputnik 5. After the spacecraft re-entered the atmosphere, it ejected the pilot, seat and all, at an altitude of 7,000 meters. It was the Soviet solution to the problem of land recovery. The mystery device attached to Sputnik 5 was for that purpose. The pilot would parachute down from that high altitude wearing a bulky spacesuit. Crazy, I know. The Soviets knew exactly how dangerous it was, of course. So much so that they gave Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, a special 2-rank promotion before re-entry. Only Moscow could come up with this kind of plan. With total state control over information, they could easily pretend it never happened in the event of a failure. The boss passed the info on to NASA. It was their worst nightmare. The glory of mankind's first spaceflight was about to be stolen from them by the Soviet Union. It was Sputnik all over again. And the CIA was caught no less off guard. Their ineptitude had caused the fiasco in the first place. The Soviets' deception was brilliant. They'd woven a masterful tapestry of truth and fiction to convince the Americans their intelligence operations were proceeding as planned. No one but the boss could have seen through it. It was obvious the Soviets had some gifted minds working on their side. But that certainly didn't excuse the CIA's massive failure. The CIA wasn't done, though, and devised an ingenious plan to avoid taking responsibility. Luckily for them, a new president had been elected the previous November, John F. Kennedy. As he didn't know the case history when taking office, the CIA was able to feed lies to his new administration. They masked their own failures, placing the blame squarely on the boss's shoulders. After all, she'd selected an unreliable sleeper. They claimed she'd failed to make use of one of the most effective means of controlling a sleeper agent's actions: holding their family hostage. The boss was well aware that would have worked. She told me so later, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. It seems clear it had to do with having her own child taken. She could never inflict the same pain on anyone else. The CIA used that against her. In his election campaign, Kennedy had vowed to close the missile gap with Moscow. If America lost the space race, that promise would be worthless. The fact that the president had no links to the philosophers only made things worse. He was completely unaware of the secret networks she'd used to complete her mission. In his eyes, she was no better than a traitor. The fate that awaited her was cruel beyond belief. The order came down from above. The boss would take the official blame for the sleeper's betrayal. More so, she'd serve as the guinea pig for NASA's manned spaceflight program. By then, NASA had gotten as far as sending a chimp named Ham into space. Now came a whole battery of ground tests to pave the way for a human to take its place. High-G tests, zero-G tests, spacesuit tests, simulations in pressurized oxygen environments. Some of the tests were highly dangerous, too dangerous for the Mercury 7, who were by then already media darlings. So the boss was made to stand in for them. She could have refused the order, argued her side of the story against the CIA, but she didn't. The way she saw it, her military experience made her a potentially valuable asset to those tests. She felt it was her duty to accept. She soon proved herself right. The boss was more than just a guinea pig. She drew on her experience to give the staff focused advice exactly where it was needed. NASA's space program took off again. At the rate they were going, putting a man in space seemed within reach. The higher-ups at NASA were impressed with her talents. They took to calling her the 8th astronaut, the Mercury Lady. The photo I sent you was taken around that time. I suppose maybe they were planning to use it as propaganda, the world's first female astronaut. But then, just as things were looking up, they hit a new snag. The government told them to add a window. There were no windows in NASA's spacecraft back then. Ham never saw the stars around him. But Washington insisted. Their sources told them Soviet spaceships had windows. Space exploration as a form of propaganda in itself. After all, what was the point of sending a man into space if he couldn't tell the world what he'd seen? Most of all, though, they simply couldn't have the Russians doing something they couldn't. It was sheer madness, and everybody knew it. NASA was already facing impossible deadlines. Now they were adding yet another element of uncertainty to the mix. Installing a window would both weaken the spacecraft and make it harder to shield the occupant from cosmic rays. They weren't about to put their Mercury 7 golden boys in that kind of danger. So the boss was chosen as the pilot instead. Even if she made it up into space, she was given less than a 20% chance of returning to Earth alive. But she took it in stride, even helping them make the necessary design changes to the Mercury capsule. It was like going to work every day at NASA to make her own coffin. Then, without warning, the U.S. received intelligence that the Soviets had moved their Vostok spacecraft to the launch site. The launch was set for the following day, April 12th, 1961. America couldn't let the Soviets beat them with Vostok. NASA was forced to cut short the testing process and move the launch date up. They pulled out all the stops to get it scheduled for the earliest hours of the next day. The spacecraft would be launched from Cape Canaveral in the dead of night. For the flight path, they chose a course that would take her as far east as possible. She'd be able to see the Earth in daylight from the window, at least for a little while. The boss climbed into the Mercury capsule, having completed less than 80% of the regular flight procedures. Both the timing and the flight path were risky, and testing was far from complete. But NASA had no other choice. The boss, for her part, never expected to come home alive. She was going on a one-way trip, the American version of Laika the dog. And yet she went all the same. Someone has to be first, she said. If fate has chosen me, then I accept, for my country, for the balance of the world. That's how she saw things. My chances may be slim, but I'll take them. I've accepted my fate. If anyone can get through this, I can. Then, on April 12th at 1:30 in the morning, the boss entered space. It was nothing short of a miracle. First, that she'd made it in an incomplete spacecraft. And second, that her flight coincided almost exactly with Gagarin's. As the sun rose over the horizon, and cosmic rays began to bombard her through the window, she saw the Earth. I think you've heard the story before. It was a world without borders, a perfect jewel. All nations, all ideologies. They seemed so far away. It almost made her laugh, knowing that they'd risked so much to beat the Soviets by a few short minutes. If she'd seen Vostok from her window, she probably would have waved. But the two spacecraft were destined for very different fates. Gagarin circled the Earth and returned to the Soviet Union, safe and sound. The Mercury capsule, on the other hand, deviated from its planned re-entry angle. The addition of a window had thrown the capsule's aerodynamics off balance. The boss's coffin veered wildly off course and began to plunge earthward. The course deviation caused the capsule to miss its splashdown point by a wide margin. It didn't have enough time to decelerate before crashing into the sea. The force of the impact shattered the spacecraft before it started to sink like a stone. The boss used the last of her strength to escape to the surface. Her body was covered in bruises and scorched by radiation. It was a miracle she was still alive. She slipped into a coma and didn't regain consciousness for 6 months. To some, what was worst of all was that she had lost the space race to Gagarin by only a few minutes. That aside, it should have been a proud day for America. Its first manned spaceflight. Sadly, her accomplishment was kept out of the history books. An attempt to save face by Washington. In contrast to Gagarin's orbital flight, America had only managed a ballistic trajectory. Her flight time was much shorter, too. And most importantly, the Soviets had brought back both spacecraft and pilot safely. NASA couldn't even conjure up a half-hearted tale of heroic survival. The coup de grace, though, was the Soviet propaganda campaign that kicked into gear after the flight. The Earth was blue. Those were the words of Gagarin on his return, and the whole world was listening. In the blink of an eye, Gagarin was an international celebrity, earning accolades from every corner. It was a PR coup for the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Washington could only grit its teeth in silence. They decided there was no value in making the boss's flight public, that it would only make matters worse. So they buried it instead, labeling it a dark mission. NASA and the CIA did everything in their power to erase all traces of the boss from Project Mercury. The result was the photo you see before you. Not a bad job, huh? Not only did they expunge her flight from the records, they denied that she ever existed. And that wasn't the end of it. As an alibi, the military claimed she'd taken part in the CIA's botched Bay of Pigs plot to take back Cuba. And when the boss was finally well enough to return to service, they wouldn't take her back. She was forced to go underground. In the public eye, the boss was still a hero of World War II. In reality, though, she was anything but that. She was a non-person, fit only for the blackest of black ops. In effect, she may as well have been dead. Gagarin went on a worldwide tour in front of millions of adoring fans. The boss, meanwhile, was a walking secret, unable to breathe a word about her experience. The authorities in Washington had this to say: "Why are you still here? If only you'd had the decency to give us a nice quote like Gagarin and then die an honorable death, you'd have gone down as a hero." 3 weeks later, on May 5th, Alan Shepard, one of the Mercury 7, made his own ballistic flight. They sure didn't try to cover up his achievement. Of course, he owed his success to the lessons learned from the boss's tragedy. Before sending Gagarin up into space, the Soviets had used a mannequin called Ivan Ivanovich to test the landing procedure, which would make the boss America's version of a crash test dummy. But she didn't care. "I'm happy to be the dummy," she said, "if it'll help the project succeed. Nothing would give me greater satisfaction." And that still wasn't the end of it. The boss had worked through the anti-Moscow faction of the Soviet Union's philosophers to place the sleeper agent, and at some point, the Soviets found out about it. Yet the Americans remained oblivious to the end. Even the philosopher network the boss plugged into never tipped them off to the double cross. That could only mean one of two things. Either the pro-Moscow philosophers had intervened, or the anti-Moscow philosophers had been turned. Either way, it was a situation their American counterparts couldn't stand. To preserve the philosopher's good name, and to repay her debt, so to speak, the boss once again made her way into the Soviet Union. There, she found herself face to face with the Soviets' own agent. And who should she find awaiting her return to Russia? The one who'd turned her sleeper against her, who'd fed them lies all this time. It was her former comrade in arms, the father of her child, the man known as the Sorrow. He didn't know it was the boss who'd sent the sleeper. Or to be more precise, the Soviet philosophers never told him. Former lovers, forced to fight to the death. One would live and one would die, she told me. That was the revenge the Soviet philosophers had in store for me. If both of them survived, their child would suffer in their place. They were left with no other option. The boss shot him. He offered no resistance. When she returned from the Soviet Union, there was no place left for her to go. She'd sacrificed everything. Everything. For her country. And in return, they treated her like a dead woman. She was made a scapegoat for no good reason. Only because power had changed hands in Washington. Any lesser being would have long since cracked. It was then that one of her old SAS comrades reached out to her, Major Zero, and so Fox was born. She undertook a mission that, well, you should know better than anybody. You were a part of it. 20 days after Shepard's flight, President Kennedy announced that America would put a man on the moon. Without the intelligence the boss obtained, America's space program would never have caught up. Armstrong and Aldrin might never have walked on the moon, but the Americans' gain had cost the boss her health, her honor, and the man she loved. The word tragedy doesn't even begin to describe what she endured. The Soviets continued their manned space flights, and in 1963, Valentina Tereshkova became the so-called first woman in space. It said they took their cue from NASA's long-buried Mercury Lady project. And so that, Snake, is the mission that kept her away from you for so long. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why not use me as her agent? She knew I'd never even think of betraying her. I think it's because she didn't want to drag you into it. She probably knew what was going to happen. To complete the mission, she'd have to turn to the philosophers, and once she did that, whatever came of it, there'd be a price to pay. No one understood that better than her. So please, Snake, let it go. When she gave me the photo, she left me to decide whether or not to pass it along to you. I know she was torn about it, just as I was. She knew you'd probably blame yourself. Why did she hold on to it for so long? That, I can't say. To remind her of how much it hurt to be erased. She wasn't that kind of person. No. I think she meant it to be a message to you. She had her identity, her life, taken away. But she wanted you, of all people, to know the truth. Snake, you've probably already figured this out, but it's no accident that I'm only now sending you something I've withheld for so long. Little Bird tells me you recently made a big decision. You and the boss are different people. I understand that. And I'm not trying to second guess you. I simply wanted you to know what she saw, how she felt. That's all. Keep it with you, Snake. Keep it deep inside. Don't ever forget the path she took. Because you and I are the only people on this earth who know the truth.
Boss, I'm sorry, but I can't.
Find Zadornov and bring him back here with Fulton Recovery.
Freeze!
Fulton Recovery subject confirmed onboard helicopter.
Freeze!
Fulton Recovery subject confirmed onboard helicopter.
see someone.
Freeze.
Down!
Okay, you're done with that area. Head for the goal. You did it! Keep it up!
Kaz, I caught Zadornov.
Impossible. I thought I'd made it. Acknowledged and appreciated. Commencing mission.
Combat.
Neutralize the enemy troops. They're trying to find you. Make sure they don't.
Requesting cover! Move in! Taking cover! Go around! Grenade! Move in!
bring him in. Commencing. as the enemy troops. Strike before they spot you. Armed and ready! Take base! Fire! okayed your request for a cardboard box. It'll be sent out shortly. They've okayed the request for support. They're sending out a cardboard box as we speak. They've okayed your request for a cardboard box. It'll be sent out shortly. Take him down. Maintain and ready to fire! That takes care of their leader. Recover him and it's mission complete. Let's get this mission started. Complete the mission and...
To hold up an enemy, you need to get behind them without being seen. Get close enough without their noticing. Point your weapon, and even a trained soldier will reach for the sky. No sense in holding up an enemy only to have his buddies attack you, though. Make sure you get him when they're alone. And be careful you don't shoot him by mistake. Kill a soldier here, and you fail the mission.
Get control of all the enemies by holding them up. Hold up all enemies. If you're discovered, the mission's over.
The mission's a failure. Return to base.
Get control of all the enemies by holding them up. Hold up all enemies. If you're discovered, the mission's over.
Freeze.
What was...
I think I see someone. Huh? I think I see someone. I'm seeing things. Freeze.
Let's get this...
Stealth.
Get control of all the enemies by holding them up.
Freeze.
Hold up all enemies. If you're discovered, the mission's over.
Freeze. Freeze.
Hey! I know I saw something.
Freeze.
Ah!
Freeze.
Ah!
Freeze.
Ah!
Freeze.
Ah!
Okay, you're done with that area. Head for the goal.
Now simply make your way to the recovery zone.
Mission complete. The folks back at Mother Base will be thrilled. This is a high-risk mission. You'll be facing some powerful opposition, but it's nothing you can't handle. Believe in yourself.
Combat.
Neutralize the Pupa AI weapon.
Commencing trip. Engage kick shot units. Firing boosters.
They've okayed the request for support. They're sending out a cardboard box as we speak.
Target locked. Firing boosters.
They've okayed your request for a cardboard box. It'll be sent out shortly.
Commencing threat. Engaging shock units. Firing boosters. Firing boosters. Shock output at maximum. Engaging shock unit. Firing boosters. Target locked. Firing boosters.
They've okayed the request for support. They're sending out a cardboard box as we speak.
Boosters. Commencing threat. Firing boosters.
They've okayed your request for a cardboard box. It'll be sent out shortly.
Firing boosters. Shock output at maximum. Engaging shock unit. Firing boosters. Commencing threat. Others are dead. Others are dead. Others are dead. Others are dead.
Get close to the AI
Others
pod.
are dead.
Pull out all the unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them. Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up.
Thank you.